so excited for virtual graffiti night. I've made a nice little art piece for us to follow along with. You've probably been to they're pretty popular, at least where I live, paint nights where you go to a group and someone leads a painting session and you all sit and eat finger foods and paint the same thing and follow along. This is essentially that, but you know, we can't all be together. And we're going to be playing in the game. So I'm very excited. Is there anybody here who needed help finding the game still? I emailed whoever said who they hadn't, but if anybody still needs help finding the game, feel free to let me know in the chat box and I can get you the download link. But I'm going to start my screen share. I am using my iPad today, but you can always play on your phone. So I'm going to screen share. Oops, wrong button. All right, so my screen should be coming up in just one moment so you guys can see what I'm working on. Can you guys see okay? Can you see my screen? Just let me know if you can't, because it says it's showing up on my end. So I just want to make sure. So I'm so excited. So I thought, because it's been really snowy in a lot of places, especially in the States, it'd be kind of nice to do like an ocean sunset this time. And again, if you guys have any suggestions, I'd hope to make this virtual graffiti night a reoccurring thing. If you guys think you'd want to do that, and you want to make a suggestion of what we should draw next time, just let me know. Drop me a comment, and I would love to do that, because I want to know what you guys would want to draw. But so I'm in the beginning of the game of Shadow's Edge. You meet Tyler, and you're in the destruction phase, and this is the phase where you're in when you kind of first start the game. So, and you don't have as many colors, but the longer you play, the more colors you get. And I tried to keep this as basic as possible so we don't have to, if you're playing and coloring along with me and you don't have the color that I have because you haven't played as long, that's totally fine. You just use whatever color you want. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as mine. But we're going to make this really pretty sunset. And I'm just going to show you step by step how we're going to do it. So let's get started. So I'm going to find a fresh wall. And please, anybody, let me know if I'm going too fast in the comments. I can slow down. I tend to ramble and go a little fast, especially when I'm drawing. So I want to make sure nobody gets left behind. But what I'm going to do is basically the first thing you want to do for the way I draw my backgrounds and my sunsets in particular is I start with a fresh, flat color. I am going to use a big brush nozzle, and I'm just gonna fill that guy up with all the orange. And again, it doesn't have to be orange, but these are just the colors I chose for this. If you want to use purple and you want to do like a night sky, that's totally up to you. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the circle stencil, because next we're going to build up from background farther away, big to small. And I want to create the sun that's kind of like setting behind the ocean. And so to do that, I'm going to do color blocking. I'm going to make basically kind of block using shapes where the colors go. And that'll help us later down the road make it easier. So I'm going to get a really big circle like that. And then I'm going to select, so this is the color I used right here on the bottom. I'm going to click the shade that's next to it, the next phase lighter. And I'm going to color it in with that. And I'm basically going to do that again, but shrink the circle down and do one more shade lighter of orange. It's going to look kind of like a bullseye, actually. Awesome. So let's see. Next, I'm going to get a different brush nozzle, and I'm going to use these little textured ones down here on the bottom right-hand corner, because I really like to add texture to my graffiti. But if you want to go for a more bubbly or blocky version, again, totally up to you. This is just how I do it. And I am going to go around the circle. And you really only have to go on that first top half, because the bottom half is going to get covered by the ocean eventually. Just keep doing that. And something else I like to do, just so, because with this, you know, it's kind of easy to kind of go out of that circle shape. I kind of go back and forth between the two colors that are touching. So I go to that little bit of darker one, then I kind of soften it. It just adds a little bit of depth, and I also like the relaxing part of sitting here and just kind of adding and building and slowly just changing it up by layering. And it just softens it. And then I'll do the same thing with the next bigger ring that I made earlier. Just like that. Just, you know, when you're doing this, and if you're ever showing your friends how to paint in here, you know, find that inner Bob Ross and paint happy little sun. Paint that happy little sun. Just enjoy yourself. And I just really like to relax while I use this brush. This is my favorite brush to use in Shadow's Edge. It just helps kind of add a little bit of texture and life, like a mural you would see. You're just gonna I also like to switch it up between, there's another brush nozzle. It's this one right here. You're just gonna, this one's just a slightly smaller one, but it kind of varies up the texture as well. So again, you don't have to do it exactly like me. Everybody's art is beautiful and valid no matter how they do it. This is just my way. And I try to make it where it's obviously there's kind of like a circular design where the colors are expanding from the inside, but also not, you know, a very strict circle. It just needs to be basic, you know. And again, I'll kind of move back in. I'll start expanding a little, like how far the colors blend into each other. So now it's not exactly a perfect circle, but it's still circular. Let me know if I'm going too fast or too slow. I want to make sure that you guys aren't like stressed out or bored out of your mind. I want you guys to have fun. Awesome. So next what I'm going to do, I'm ready to add the sun. And this is my favorite part because basically you take the orange and you add that yellow in that I'm about to add in, and it just starts to pop. I'm going to add the sun. And I like when I do my sunsets, I like the sun to kind of be like it's going down. So it's going to be, the ocean's going to kind of cut halfway through the sun, but feel free to move yours around. I just put mine in the middle of this because it would make sense for the sun rays. Oh, oops. I'm going to click a big brush, fill that guy in. Then I'm essentially going to do the same thing that I did with the big sun rays. Just kind of do that, soften it up, make it pretty. I'm going to go build up on the yellow. This one, I don't do another tiny circle inside. I kind of just add it in, if that makes sense, because it's so small when you're trying to blend. Like when I was blending the big orange circles, it wasn't, it wasn't too hard because they were very enough in size to where like I wouldn't get mixed up on what area I'm in. But the yellow, the sun's kind of smaller, so I just I'm not as finicky with it. I just blah, blah, blah. And again, one more up of the yellow. And I know that some of these colors are really close to each other, and they may look very similar or almost the same. But once you see the finished mural, it's actually like you can see the difference. So sometimes if you're drawing with like 3 shades of yellow and they don't look too different, trust me, you just play around with those colors and you're going to see some really cool variations. Next, I am going to actually add the ocean. And when I do the ocean, I actually start with the middle blue of the 3 blues I have, of the 3 dark blues, I mean, because I actually like starting in the middle and then separately doing the darker parts of the water and the lighter parts of the water. So rather than how I did with the orange where I started with the darkest, this I'm starting with the medium, like lightness, darkness. I'm gonna click that one. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make a square and I'm gonna make this thing huge. I'm not very good at straight lines, so this is just how I make a guide for myself because I'm clumsy on here. And then I'm going to get my big nozzle and just fill that in. Add that big ocean. So you've got the start, and I made mine crooked, but that's okay. I mean, no graffiti's perfect. So I'm gonna leave it as it is. I'm not too picky about it being crooked. Maybe the camera is at an angle is what it is. And then I'm gonna grab a brush because I like to straighten up that edge, even if I'm not very good at drawing straight lines. I have that little bit of a guide from what the stencil left. You can also add little waves. My ocean is calm. So next what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab the lightest of the 3 darker versions of the blue. So this one right here. I'm gonna make a little skinny brush. And I'm gonna kind of make little lines like this. And what that basically is, is like the way the sun is shining on the water. Once this event's over, I would love to see any screenshots of your art you made. And again, I want to see everybody's if you feel comfortable sharing, just because I'm excited to see what you guys made. And like you can always use what I'm showing you tonight if you want to go back once you get those colors and do it. Where I'm going to make a recording of this tutorial available on our YouTube after. And but again, just like you're saying with that you did the night, that you can add stars at the end and it's going to be gorgeous, especially with the gradients and stuff. So I'm adding more lines, and eventually what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of thicken them up because it's getting closer to what our eye is, the camera. I just kind of scribble it. It doesn't have to be perfect. I think sometimes, I'm guilty of this, is I tend to kind of go perfectionist on this. But there's actually, if you are into art or you listen to anything about art, like podcasts and stuff, there's something that they've mentioned about how a lot of the times the human eye will fill in gaps where things don't make sense to make it make sense. So if it doesn't look perfect when you're sitting there focusing on a particular line or something, don't worry about it. Later, when it's done, your eye's going to look at it and it's going to trick your brain into that thing making sense. So don't stress if like a line's not coming out the way you want, things like that. Like right now I'm sitting here going, oh, these are too scratchy, but that is fine. Just have fun, just relax while you're doing it. This game was made to help you relax when things are tough and stressful. So don't ever stress about it. Just have fun. And then what I might do is I'll take that original blue color, kind of just add a little bit more scribble just to make it a little more interesting. It doesn't have to be perfect again. Like now it's kind of, you're looking at it, you're like, oh, it's looking more like the ocean. So next what I'm gonna do, this is where I start adding the shadows. I'm gonna get that very, very darkest blue. And I am gonna kind of go from the edges and start basically doing the same thing, but from the sides of the wall of the mural. And I kind of try to keep this sort of in line with the angle that the lighter blue is making. And it kind of increases that little bit of perspective we have. And again, just have fun with it. It doesn't have to be perfect. That little inner critic, just ignore it. If he's saying that line was too crooked and you want to redo it, ignore it. Just have fun. Enjoy yourself. Then I'll do the same thing. Just kind of go back and forth. Just add a little bit of variety. Just like how we did with the sky, just go a little bit of back and forth and expand how the colors touch. Just really have fun. There we go. And again, I'm going to go back and kind of build up those colors. The more you layer, the more alive it will look. In my opinion, again, don't have to do it this way. And occasionally, so you might do, I did this on the last mural. I accidentally went over on the edges. What I might do occasionally is on the very end, kind of just go in and clear up that edge. Just a little, not perfect. I'm excited to see what you guys make. If you want to post it on our Instagram, or if you post it on Shadowgram, that would be really cool. And then I would love to do an emoji react. But so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next step. And I am going to, I have these turquoise colors. If you don't have these colors, you can use something else. I can't remember if this is one that you get at the more you play or if it's an original color, but I'm going to get this darker of the three. I'm going to just add a few little, very little lines. These basically are like a little bit of highlights. This would be a great color to do this effect if you're doing a night time and it's the sun, or not the sun, the moon. Because of the blue, it would look really nice. Basically, the closer you get to the camera, the bigger they'll get to. You're just basically building up the shine on the water. And I'm also going to go back and forth between the color that was underneath it. I'm going to layer it some. And I'm going to do, go back in, do it a little bit more. And it might look a little funky at first, just because you're like kind of seeing it up close without, you know, the whole picture being finished, but it's going to look a lot better in the end. And I might add a little bit of lines in the middle. Just kind of keep building, going back and forth, and it adds a really cool effect. Awesome. And just because I have the 3 different versions of that turquoise, I'm just going to add a little bit of variety. You don't have to. I'm just going to just to play around with it. Kind of adds a little bit of fun right there. I can already feel like I hear seagulls looking at this. I don't know if any of you have ever lived near a beach, but it's so nice at that time of day where the sun's coming down. All right. I feel pretty good about that. I'm ready to move on from this spot. Next, what I'm going to do is I am going to add the little bit. I like to add a little bit. Have you ever looked at like a movie or a picture, or even the ocean in real life, when the sun hits that top of the water and there's like a little bit of sparkle, like a little bit of white sparkle and almost glitters in the sun? I'm going to add a little bit of that using white. Kind of, first I'm going to add a few little lines. And then I'm going to add a dot. I'm going to just basically have a little fun and dab on it. Or if you prefer, you can always use this little brush. Just kind of dab. That little texture brush. I go back and forth between the texture and the little thin line, so there's a little bit of variety between like solid shine and sparkles. Just a little bit. And you can always even do, instead of white, you can add a little bit of yellow. And then go back and forth layering the white and the yellow, and then I'll make kind of like the color of the sun, the gold color in that shine as well. I do that by picking a yellow, kind of going back and forth between this and the white. Not much, because the yellow is just so strong. You kind of lose. Like, I think I went a little too crazy on that, but that's okay. Yeah, I went a little crazy with the white, but that's totally fine. It's art, it's interpretive. Might go like a little right there. Just layer it some more. Kind of go back and forth like I was before. Then go back with what I was doing, kind of fill in those gaps. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments or the chat. I would love to answer any questions you have. Okay. And you can always kind of do the same thing. Like, let's say you want to add, like you want there to be a little bit more shine on the sides, like over here. You can do that. Your ocean, you do whatever you want. So I'm thinking I want to add some clouds, kind of like I did in the other one. But first, I want more sun, like I had in this one. So I'm going to expand the sun, just because the more I went on, I was like, oh, the sun's a little too circular. There's not enough light growing out of it. So I'm just going to go back and texture it a little bit more. I like to tap it. When you tap it, it kind of helps keep it from being too strict of a circle. Just have fun with it. I also kind of like to randomly kind of tap it a little off to the side, like over here. It might seem a little messy, but it actually kind of helps later down the road when you start blending a little bit more. This. Then I'll get that orange that meets that yellow, kind of tap on top of it, and it just blends really nicely. It brightens up that sky, blends those colors. You will be ferociously tapping your phone, and whoever you're sitting with in the room will think you're angrily texting, but you're actually just having fun in Shadow's Edge. Angrily tap. And like I said earlier, you're probably accidentally going to go over the ocean. And that's okay. You can fix that later. Just don't be afraid to be a little messy. Kind of go back and forth between all these colors to help kind of layer it up. Get all in there. If you work with an Apple pencil, like I do, typically I use this, but even when I'm doing this part, I still use my finger because it gets too, the best word I can find to describe it is strict. If it gets too strict when you use the pencil, because then you obsess over making it perfect. But sometimes it's good to let it be imperfect, kind of like in life, because you learn from any moments of where things didn't come out perfectly. Just keep tapping. Make it all pretty. It's kind of starting to look like that. And we still have to add that last little bit of the sun to make it stand out, which is the white. And you're basically going to get the color white. You're just going to dab it a little in the middle. And that's where the sun is. That whole time that actually wasn't, all those yellows and the brighter parts were actually not the yellows, the sun. That was actually just that last little bit of light before the sun hits the sky. Then just blend it, soften up those edges, and then go back and forth. There you go. I'm hoping, I would love to do another paint night in the future with everybody, but next time I would love to do something like portraiture or something. Because with the stencils, the more you play, you can actually get a stencil that looks sort of similar to a face. And it's really fun to use that stencil to make portraits out of. That's one of my favorite things to do in here because I love portrait art. So if anybody is ever curious about doing something with that for a paint night, that would be lots of fun. And the more you work, the more like colors are going to kind of not stand out as much. You can always go back in and occasionally just kind of dab up. But anything with the sky, you probably want to dab up and clean up and blend a little more before you add the clouds, because once you add the clouds, it's a little harder to fix. So I just recommend like getting the sky to where you think you want it to be as close as possible and then do the clouds. Because things are kind of harder to fix once they meet. Like the ocean's not as bad, but the clouds, it gets a little hard to change things with the background once the clouds are in there. And I like to add lots of clouds with gradients. So I'm going to go ahead, and if you don't have the stencil, I'll show you how to do it without the stencil as well, but I'm just going to quickly do one with the stencil and then I'll make one without, just because I know this particular stencil is one that you get the more you play, but you get it pretty soon if you've just recently started playing it. I think you get it, like the more missions you fill out, the sooner you get it, the faster, but I'm pretty sure you get it pretty early on. But I'm going to put him over here. And I am going to grab, I'm actually not going to go super dark with the gray because, you know, clouds are fluffy. And if I make it too dark, it'll look kind of odd. So I'm going to get that kind of lightish gray. I'm going to get a big brush and I'm going to fill it in. And then once I fill that in, I'm going to just barely move that up, just barely, just slightly off. And then I'm going to get white. I'm going to use the texture brush, the smaller one. So on these two texture brushes, it's the one on the left. That's the one I'm going to use because it's smaller, a little bit finer than the other one. I'm just going to go a lot. Oh no, I did a wrong thing. And that's going to happen sometimes. And that is okay. I'll just get it as close as I could. Okay. So I'm going to try that again. And I'm just going to kind of get in the edges right there, just on the top, with a little bit of that texture brush. And I'm going to actually tap it because I found myself starting to get a little too finicky with the straight lines with using my pencil. I'm going to tap it and make it a little more fluffy. You can even kind of get in a little in between of the two. Kind of, whoops. You can get a little in between of that gray in there as well. Kind of blend it, but you don't have to do that. It's just fun. And then again, build up back and forth. And that's how I do the clouds. And that's just my way with the stencil. But now I can show you how to do it without the stencil in case you don't have this one yet. You can see I went a little bit more heavy with the texture on the clouds on those, on this past mural I did. It just, you can even, if like you're like, I don't like that, you can get a different brush and kind of fill in those gaps. You can even use a line and kind of expand them. Maybe add another little swirl. You can do so much with it. You can just add on to that stencil. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make one without that stencil. And it's really essentially the same thing. You just want to grab, I want to grab this kind of like middle-sized one. I want to basically make the flat bottom of the cloud and the big poofy parts over here. Get a little skinny guy, fill that in. Next, I'm going to get the white, and I'm just going to basically scribble with my finger. And it's okay to be purposely messy because it makes it look more like a real cloud when you do that. Use the tip of my finger and scribble. And what makes it look really interesting too is if you go back with that gray, do that again, scribble over it. Then go back to your light color and do that. Adds a little bit of how that, like how clouds have that little bit of texture. And then I'll put that little in-between gray. It's just lots of fun. Make a little cotton candy cloud. And in this version, I have 2 accounts, and this is the account where I have less colors. But in my other one, I have lots of pinks that I've gotten because I've been playing for a while. And what's really cool is when the more colors you can get a little bit more realistic. And I like to make my clouds a little bit of pink and orange on my other game. Where I've earned all of these colors. So when you get to that point, you can always play with like you mix a little bit of the pink, the orange, and the yellow, with the yellow kind of being on the sides of the clouds that's closer to the sun, and it gets to looking really cool. So if you ever try this again, when you've got more colors later on, try it with the pink. It looks pretty cool. Then I'll go in with the texture brush, kind of along where I was. And that's how you would do a cloud without the stencil. Mine was a little chunky, but you can always zoom in and make it a little better than mine. I also like to use the lines, the skinny little line brush head, kind of add a little guys. Like that. And now this is also the part where if you are, like, let's say you did this all in darker colors, you can make it look like a night sky by adding stars. You can put little white stars, you know, kind of over here like that, but mine's a sun. Or you can put seagulls in the sky, like it's a silhouette of birds. I'm going to do that, just add a little bit of life to it. You just make little M's. A little flock of seagulls flying around in the clouds. And if you're feeling a little extra crazy, we can put Jaws in here, just right over there. I'm feeling like we should add Jaws, just to make it a little funny. Put him in there. And really, that's basically it. You would just kind of, that's where you would personalize it a little bit more. You'd put anything else you want to. You can put a boat of someone, you know, fishing over here, or like what I'm doing with Jaws. And you just want to have fun with it. This game isn't supposed to make anybody feel stressed or anxious about their art. You just want to, messing up's a good thing when you're drawing. And I just noticed that I did something that I said I would fix earlier, and I didn't. The sun and the sky kind of went over the water. So I'm just going to go back in and clean that up, just because I've been really good about not being a perfectionist too much, but I got to give myself a little bit of something that I like to fix. I'll just maybe scribble it back on there so it doesn't look too unnatural or too fixed, I guess is the best way to say it. You don't want it to mess up your layering. And I kind of like how the white in the water and the white in the sun met. Makes it look a little bit more natural. Yeah. And that would be my sunset. And I would love to see what you guys made if you post it to Shadowgram. I'm just going to put a little Shadow's Edge logo in the corner, because I'm so proud of our game and all that we do. I think we can call it a night. And thank you so much for coming, everybody. This was so much fun. And I would love to do this again. Bye, everybody.